Hey everyone, this is People of Substance by LemonSkies. I'm Olga, and my guest today is Ryan Berman, who, when I first met you, Ryan, I called you Brian, and you graciously continued talking to me. So thank you for that.
Clearly, I had bad hearing. That's what it was.
Yeah, first 30 seconds, and I've got you laughing. So Ryan, not to be confused with Dexter B, is the founder of Courageous, which is a consulting firm that works with brands. And I'll let you speak about what it is you do. But you also speak, publish, write, provide trainings on just this whole concept of courage that we'll keep coming back to.
It's a fun gig. It really is. It's not where I ever thought. If you asked me to write a list of 100 things that I would do a decade ago, 15 years ago, I'm 99.9% sure that being in the courage business would not have been on my list.
So can we talk about how you arrived to courage business and what does that mean?
Yeah, so I came out of New York. All of my mentors were the crazy Mad Men folks, caught the tail end of that. And all I really wanted to do at the time was like entertain 2.2 million people. I'd rather have done that than have 2.2 kids. And of course, now I have 2.2 kids. I have a little 0.2 dog, small dog, my 0.2. And I came out of the advertising world and was very fortunate to learn narrative from the people of that universe. And when you're not there to defend the story, it has to be able to sing on its own. An amazing skill to have, whether you're in advertising or in other parts of business. And I moved to California now, 20 years ago, and fumbled into startup life. Never thought I would be in that world. Started at my own agency. We ended up growing it to about 90 people. And we got to that point where, Olga, it was probably like a decade of me having to be in the business to get out of the business, and had finally hired well. And here we are in San Diego, California. And it's like, how do we compete with, the real centers of creativity, New York, LA, San Francisco? This is pre-pandemic. I don't think anybody really cares now where you are. But at the time, it was like, well, how are we going to position ourselves? And when I looked at what really lit up our team, it was every time they were working on a courageous idea. And when they were sort of surrendered to work on a safer idea for a client, you could feel the energy change at the company. 5 p.m. rolled around, the office was empty. But if you're working on like a truly meaty, terrifying, creative idea, I'd have my staff there till 8 p.m., 10 p.m. And it wasn't about keeping them there. They were excited to be there. They wanted to be there. And then when our clients actually bought those ideas, the amazing thing was the return was greater for those companies. The shelf life of those ideas lasted longer. And then they worked. It was like they got more awareness, more brand exposure, and from a sales standpoint, did what they needed to do. So we had come to the conclusion, courageous ideas are the only ones that matter. And I thought I was going to go, hey, take this value proposition out into the world. And the original idea was, I think this is a book. Like, let's go interview all these courageous leaders and talk about how courageous ideas are the only ones that matter. And, I go on the journey, and, it's very classic storytelling 101. The hero thinks the treasure is one thing, and it turns out to be something entirely different. And the big aha moment I had was, wow, good luck selling a courageous idea if the company doesn't have a courageous leader. Like, courageous ideas die without courageous leadership. And I still love courageous ideas. It's still a very big part of our business. But the more people I spoke to who felt lit up by the concept, they weren't afraid to have courageous conversations. They weren't afraid to make the courageous decision. They weren't afraid to bring teams together for those courageous moments and build courageous cultures. And, I realized this was a much bigger concept than just a book about courageous ideas. It was much wider and also much needed. If you look at half the Fortune 500 since 2000 are gone, 70% of corporate initiatives are failing, and you wonder why. Like, why are all these companies stuck or stale or scared or playing it safe? So you kind of flip this thing around, and I looked at what I was learning, and then I put myself through the same process and kind of had this aha moment, like, how could I write a book about courage and not make the courageous move myself. And this was in 2017. So you can imagine me coming back from the journey. I had two partners at the time, and they're like, "Where's the book? Where's the book?" And I was like, well, the good news is the book is done, and the bad news is I'm firing myself. And I felt madly passionate about this need to, like, yeah, the world does need more courage, both in business and in life. And if I could help companies that are stuck get unstuck, that felt like the right path for me at this time.
So you mentioned the book, and I just happen to have a copy here.
Hey, I know that book.
Yeah. So I started reading it. It's coming with me on vacation, so you should be very proud. But
Right.
what I really enjoyed is that, sometimes defining what something is starting with the point of what it isn't. And you have a section that you start with about courage myths.
Yeah.
To kind of delineate what it's not. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I'll say that the book was a 1,000-day listening lap. For anyone that is listening, this is not a soapbox book. I've made a living as an observationalist, so I'm good at hearing what's not said. And so the book, I feel like it was like a documentary. There were certain questions I needed answered before I passed go, and the first one is exactly what you said, like what is courage and what isn't courage. And I kind of had a gripe to pick with the dictionary definition of courage, and like, who am I as a guy that wasn't an Ivy League kid to question the dictionary? Like, already I'm off on the wrong foot here, right? But like that, the dictionary definition is the ability to do something that frightens you. And I don't know a lot of people that want to do that, let alone do that at work. Like the numbers are like under 5% are interested in pushing. That means that 95% of us are in freeze and flight mode. Well, maybe 5% of us are fighters. And so I'm like, wow, where's the utility in the definition? Like, how do I know if courage is a currency? How do I know where to unlock it and where not to? If I try to use it everywhere, even if I am in the 5%, I'm going to exhaust myself, my teams, and like people are going to be like, oh my gosh, eye roll, get me out of here. So I didn't love this definition of the ability to do something that frightens you. And along the way, as you stated, I learned all the things that courage wasn't. I learned how we confuse a reckless move with a courageous move. I think later in the journey, I learned we confuse a resilient move with a courageous move. And look, when none of us really get a say on change, right? Nobody asked you about, do you want a pandemic or not a pandemic? No, like we didn't vote on these things. And so when change is driving us, I think that is the resilient muscle. And when we're driving change and we're proactive with that change, that is the courageous muscle. And so I go back to the myths. There's 6 of them that are in the book. I can understand why there's some cloudiness around the word. Coming out the other side of that, we talk about what is courage. And there's 3 levers that make up the concept of courage for us. First, there's knowledge. Second, what we call faith. And third, there's action. And if you think about your life, how often have you known the exact right move that you should make on something? And the more you know, hopefully the more you feel, the more faith you have that it's the right move. And when we talk about faith, we don't mean it so much in the religious sense. We mean it in the belief and the conviction sense. And there's a lot of companies right now that maybe they might know what's at stake, and they might feel that it's the right move, but it doesn't mean that they're doing and they're leaping and they're taking that next step. So if you just remove one of the 3 levers of knowledge, faith, and action, it's something else. Knowledge and faith without action is paralysis. And faith and action without knowledge is a reckless move. And what we've discovered is that knowledge and action without faith, and this happens, you're at a company for 20 years and you believed in it at first, but now it's just a job and you feel numb on the inside and you're going through the motions. And so when there's knowledge and action, but faith is really low and you feel numb, that is usually an act of status quo. You're playing it safe. So our whole business at Courageous is about helping companies have the knowledge, that's the think side, have the faith, that's the feel side, And then what are we going to do about it? That's the do side. That's the action piece.
Yeah, I will say this is probably the most existential conversation we've had on here.
Well, let's get more. We don't have to play in that role. We can get out of the waiting for Godot. I mean, our entire business, this is the process of how we go about our knowledge team. So then it moves into me, which is the faith building side. Like, how do you actually create belief inside an organization? Sometimes it's a narrative, sometimes it's an ad campaign, sometimes it's helping the leader get the right combination of words that they should be consistently articulating on the inside. And then my third partner is the action taking side. So how many companies right now need outside an accountability partner? Like, we said this thing was going to be important, and then there's no action. So we're acting as almost like a courage checkpoint on a monthly basis with some of our clients, and we're that outside perspective that sometimes they need to keep nudging forward.
So, as you probably know, Ryan, I am in nonprofit space, and a lot of guests and contacts and peers I work with are in mission-driven type of organizations. And as I like to remind people, nonprofit is a tech status; it's not a way of operating. So, how do we apply some of these concepts, business concepts, in the mission space?
Well, first of all, I know it may not feel like this all the time, but if you are in the mission space, I think you have a colossal advantage so long as you've got clarity. And I know that's a big asterisk on the end, right? I mean, if you have clarity and the purpose is genuine and it's emotional and it's unique and it can help you separate from others, and you wake up thinking about that calling, the question I should probably be posing back, do you have a job, a career, or a calling? Usually this mission work, there's a calling to go do what you need to do, right? So that alone is like the number one asset and reason to believe. What holds back so many companies is just the realities of fear and something that's going on in your mind that you talk yourself out of or talk yourself into that paralysis analysis that we never make a leap and we never make a move. But when you're mission driven and it's clear, then you've got that thing that can help you get through the fear. Like, you have to do this thing. World peace is only possible if I continue. I've got to get through the fear. And there's a famous line in the courage business that fear and courage are kin, that you actually don't get to the courageous choice without channeling it through fear. Having a clear BHAG of a purpose, I call it a rally cry in your why. It's the reason people come together. If you can truly operationalize that across your team and into the field, it's a massive competitive advantage, because most companies are just selling gadgets and widgets, and they might say they've got a purpose, but is it really? Or like, oh, but what's this veiled attempt to get me to buy something? So huge opportunity to be brave and courageous, knowing you've got this mission-centered idea.
So you would talk a little bit about motivation. You're called oftentimes, for all the good reasons, a motivational speaker. So what is motivation? I saw that eye roll. What is motivation? And also, as a bonus, if you can share the most memorable, exciting motivational speech you've had to give.
Yeah. So you caught me in an eye roll. Yeah, I don't see myself as a motivational speaker. I see myself as a conversational speaker. I mean, obviously I hope I inspire people, right? But like, I try to get, let's let the data do what it needs to do, but it is a cocktail with emotion. So your stuff actually lands. But to me, it's more about just keeping it real and not trying too hard, frankly. Like, and again, that sounds like a terrible advertising for my skills, but like, look, I'm always trying to be prepared for the realities of what an audience is going through. And I think the way to motivate an audience is to be do the work and be as prepared as possible to understand the audience, so you can give them what they need to convince themselves to take the next step. Like, I'm not here to convince you of anything, but I might say something that you look at and go, oh shoot, I actually have been playing it safe. safer than I thought I should. Like, hey, what is my rally cry and my why? Like, how do you actually get to that? Right? Like, often we get the call and it is a, hey, you need a friend right now. Fact, if you are a leader, it can be very lonely to be you, and you're trying to do the best you can. And the higher up you get in an organization, you keep these things inside your head. You need an ally and a friend, which we try to play that role and say, hey, let's shepherd this courage. Let's do this together. Here are the blind spots. Here are the ramifications. Here's what's going to happen if we don't do anything at all. We're going to lose our team. So I take a lot of pride not really being a motivational speaker, but doing the work, staying a practitioner, and then yes, trying to like find the right vessel that the story should live in so it lands with you, and then you could actually go and take some action. What's my favorite one? I love all my children equally, right? But no, I would say that's kind of, to be honest, last month. So you know what? When we met, which was at the shift, and what an awesome event that was. That day was a pretty special 24 hours for me. You know, the last thing I want to do, Olga, is waste people's time. And it's like, please just call me off the stage if there's no value here. And you work and you work and you iterate on material, and as something works, you go deeper on that. And if something doesn't work, you take it out of your keynotes. And so for 5 years, I feel like I had been working and working and working. And that morning I was with Procter and Gamble in Ohio, and then was like kept the fingers crossed that my flight would be on time, that I could come to close the shift, which was an amazing, intimate group of folks. And the stage was badass. Shout out to that whole team, by the way. And so I think when P&G, who's known for superiority, like their whole thing is be superior at retail, right? Be superior when it comes to understanding your customer. And when they choose to let somebody like me into their lives and can see that I can bring value and hopefully connect a team of people, that doesn't go unnoticed on me. And so to go from that group to then people that are trying to change the world and make the world better, it was a pretty darn good 24 hours.
It was a great event. It was definitely a good group. And like you said, it looked like a stage of a nightclub more than a corporate event.
What was your cocktail of choice that night?
Seltzer water with lime.
Oh, okay. You played it safe. Okay, that's fair.
Played it safe. I had to drive home.
Yeah, good choice. Good choice.
So you mentioned this, and what I really found fascinating, and that's where some of the mission comes in. You talked about sock problems, and that's an initiative you started to fund causes. So you sell literally socks that benefit various causes. Can you speak to that, and how do you choose the issues that you get yourself involved in?
Yeah, so when I left my last life, I had a 2-year window where I had to sort of figure out, what am I going to do in this time? You know, I just sold out to my partners, and I had a 2-year non-compete. And I had this process that I learned that's in Return on Courage, the book. And I think a lot of people live like they have their ideas live in the land of theory, and they never really test them or unlock them. So here I had a little bit of capital, a little bit of time, and a lot of passion for like using my superpowers to help. And for about a decade, I had this idea of like, well, wouldn't it be cool if I launched a sock company that could sock problems? And literally that's the name of the company is Sock Problems. If you're going to sock a problem in the world, what problem would you sock? Would you sock cancer? Would you sock climate change? Would you sock racism? So every sock in our line has a different charity partner or nonprofit partner on the track, and we send 25% of targeted cash back to those partners because I'm really not an expert in socking problems. They are. So if I can fund them to help them do what they do, but also give people like a tangible thing that they could wear to show their support. That was always sort of the main idea. So sockproblems.com is the company. We want you to, if you care, wear and share is the idea. And at first it was partnering with Michael Thatcher, who's over at Charity Water. He's the CEO there. I just have a great relationship with him. And charity water, to me, I kind of describe them as the charity police, right? Like, how is the money actually getting used, and where is it going to working dollars versus non-working?
Mhm.
And then we had some relationships as well that we had built over time, and we just liked what we had heard from those different partners. So, if you want to sock hate, the money goes back to the Trevor Project. But if you want to sock inequality, it goes back to PFLAG. If you want to sock racism, it goes to the Rodney King Foundation. And it's just like my little way of trying to make a little dent. Are we going to be a gazillion-dollar business? Well, maybe one day. I don't think so, but it's more about like doing what I can, using my superpower for good to try to help.
Are there any causes that you're personally involved in that you get involved in your community or are close to your heart?
I mean, I feel like my brain is more like, how do I help a lot of causes a
Mhm.
little versus one cause a lot? And
Sure.
so sock problems really is my way of trying to give back. Although I'll tell you, this is a good teaser, I guess. So we're launching Courage Week in September, and September 6th will be our National Courage Day. And I just want people to have, and I don't care if this is business or personal, right? Like during Courage Week, I want to at least create a trigger on the calendar that if you want to declare something, hey, I'm going to start my new company, I'm scared, or I'm coming out, or whatever it might be, like there's something on the calendar for you during Courage Week.
Mhm.
And one of the things we're talking about doing during Courage Week is popping up a 48-hour creative agency that is going to take on a challenge of nonprofit. And again, this is not a courageous company thing. This is a collective community thing.
Mhm.
And what we're exploring over here is actually dividing those who want to come in and help us. And this model came from a company called Good Measure. Shout
Mhm.
out to those guys, where we might have two teams, a local initiative and a national initiative. And on the local side right now, I mean, the homelessness problem here in San Diego is not small. And so, and to me, there's so much more to it than just, it's almost lazy to just call it homelessness. It's not homelessness. There's a lot of stuff happening behind that. So I would be very surprised if we don't put a team on attacking that problem. And then
Mhm.
we'll have a national initiative as well. So my energy between now and the rest of the year is thinking through, like, how do we stand that up,
Yeah.
have it culminate in Courage Week, and make a difference.
I love that. I love that as a concept. And, I'm just going to propose wearing white after Labor Day as an act of courage also.
Well, I hope this isn't going to run after Labor Day. I mean,
I think it's more
geez.
pants that it
Okay,
applies
okay,
to.
okay, good.
So let's shift gears for a little. I mean, we got pretty serious and had really in-depth conversation, but just for a little bit of fun. And sometimes I interview people that I've known for 15 years. You are a fairly new acquaintance, so I thought we could do a little round of outrageous facts about Ryan Berman.
Wow. Okay, let's do it.
So, so the way it works, you literally share 3 or however many you'd like interesting, outrageous things about Ryan Berman.
That's it.
That's
It's
it.
kind of like
The rules.
instead
It's
of
very foolproof.
instead of two truths and a lie, it's just like three truths.
We do that quite a bit. Two truth and a lie, and that tends to be really fun. Learning about somebody who's playing bagpipes, things like that. A lot to live up to.
All right. So let's see here. We'll get more extreme. We'll start simple and we'll work our way out. Sound good?
Okay, that sounds great.
Um, one of the perks of living in San Diego is that my happy place remains a soccer field.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of joy in my Sundays being able to play in a league. And yes, it's an old man's league now up here in my late 40s. But in some ways we're all like little boys and girls trapped in these adult bodies. And so having this weather that we do, that's still my happy place. And just to parlay on the soccer talk, one of the honors of the decade for me has been partnering with Landon Donovan, who is probably I mean, if he's not at the top, he's certainly on the podium of U.S. soccer players of all time. And I've been gifted the opportunity to tell his memoir and have probably 80 hours of interviews with soccer brass in the States. And it's a complete like fanboy pinch me moment of a story. And it's just, I think people think they know Landon. And then we'll have the book ready when the World Cup comes to the US. So that's been a wild one. Let's see here. I have in my past life living in upstate New York. I remember being in college and looking at the TV and seeing Mardi Gras going on. And then me turning to two of my buddies and go, I would drive there right now. And they'd say, I'd go. And then 24 hours later, we were in Mardi Gras. So, spontaneity still plays. There's joy there in doing those types of crazy things. That's three good ones. Where
That's
else do you want me to take
excellent.
this?
No,
Solid?
this is great. Solid. So
I lived in New York City for almost a decade. I feel like that was like the true learning ground. That's another
sure.
good one. Can't take the New Yorker out of me, even though I live in San Diego now.
Yeah. Well, you've been a wonderful guest, and I just really appreciate you taking the time and being on and saying yes. So thank you for being here. So like I said, this is coming on vacation with me. So I will report back. And
I fully expect you will. I know I'll get the truth, and maybe that's the other part of courage. That was the aha moment. That it's almost sad that telling the truth is now an act of courage, but I expect nothing less than the truth from you on the book. So keep me honest. I'd love to know what you liked, and also if something wasn't clear, let me know.
Will do. Well, thanks for being here, Brian.
Great to see you, Olga. Take care.